So far, 2020. Here we go.
Oh my God. Oh my God. This is a giant. Stay hooked up, baby. Stay hooked up. Give me your mouth. How about that one? How about that one for number 2? It's the right kind.
Right here.
2. Number 2. Yeah, it's a 5-pounder. That's good. Thank you.
What's up, guys? Let's talk jigs. Most all of us fish them. You know, there's probably a few baits like in history that have caught more big fish than a jig. You know, I would venture to say maybe a spinner bait just because it's been around so long, but jigs have been around a long time and a lot of giant fish have come from fishing jigs. Guys, and I want to show you guys my setup and really 3 main colors that are my go-to for jig fishing. I like to keep jigs simple, especially when it comes to colors, setup, equipment, everything. I'm very simple, but yet very methodical. You know, there's nothing more frustrating than opening up your tackle box and you've got 12 jig colors in there, different combinations and stuff. And I keep it very, very, very simple. And I'm gonna show you guys the 3 jig setups that I have and I use, along with the 2 different rod technique setups for jigs, depending on what I'm doing, that might help you guys out a little bit. This is the time of the year, guys. Jigs are starting to get good. Other than the winter time, I would say this: when you start getting post-spawn, jigs can be a big player. You guys know I'm a big missile jigs guy. Missile baits. I have caught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bass on that little 1/2 ounce Ike Mini flip right there. So we'll start with that one. I'll give you 3 colors. First off, the most common, everybody throws it, everybody has your jig fisherman, black and blue. That right there is 1/2 ounce Ike Mini flip, black and blue. And I like to put a Dbomb, of course, trailer on all of my jigs. This right here is Ballistic Bruiser is the color. It's got, look at this, really dark. It's got some blue flake in it. It has a little bit of ballistic blue in it to match the colors of the skirts. And that's right there. That's one of the most common, probably the most commonly thrown color across the country in history. Black and blue. Everybody loves a black and blue jig. So you gotta have one of those. Now, the next 2, are going to incorporate 2 new colors that Missile Baits is releasing during the Bassmaster Classic this coming week in Fort Worth. Now, I've always been a very natural guy. Natural colors, especially when I'm flipping, and I've typically always been green pumpkin. I love a green pumpkin jig. I love a green pumpkin soft plastic. There are situations where I'd go to a different color, but that's probably 75% of my jig colors are natural green pumpkin. Now, one of the colors that they're releasing is that little dude right there. It's called Ray Bob. Ray Bob right there is kind of a mixture of green pumpkin with watermelon, and then it has some green and red flake in it and stuff like that. Awesome natural color. And what that does, of course, one of my favorite jigs on the planet is that green pumpkin. I've started to flip my green pumpkin jig with the Ray Bob on the end of it. It's going to give it a little bit more flair. It's going to be a little bit more visible to the fish, and it just gives it that little bit of extra attention that you really want. Now, I used to dye the ends of my tails depending on where I was or what I was doing, what part of the country. It depends on what the crawfish look like or the fords look like there. But that right there, that's my new go-to, is this Ray Bob on the end of that 1/2 ounce Ike Mini flip green pumpkin right there, Ray Bob. So, brings me to my next one. So, you know, this right here, of course, there used to be times all over the country, and you know where you're at, where your crawfish, a lot of the times of the year, has some little orange and bright yellow appendages, colors in your crawfish. You know, when you start getting into Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, into that region, a lot of their crawfish have orange and yellow in them. Most of the year, they have that in there. And I used to take a green pumpkin Ike Mini flip, and then I used to put just a straight green pumpkin Dbomb on the back of it, and I used to just dye the tails. in order to match the hatch with the crawfish. And I know, look, the Ike Mini Flip also comes in a Bammer craw, which has got some streaks of orange in it as well. This one I actually skirted myself with some green pumpkin and a little bit of brown in it. I actually go through more skirts than I do color and actual jigs, but now I don't have to do that anymore. This is now, I mean, especially if I'm in the middle of the country and those crawfish have those orange appendages and stuff in it, this is absolutely gonna be my new setup. I have 3 new colors here. Well, 2 new colors in Dbombs, but these are gonna be my 3 go-tos from here moving forward. Missile Baits has done an incredible job with listening to us and understanding forage and understanding why we need different colors. And these are some great colors that are being released this week in Fort Worth, because a lot of the crawfish in Texas has those orange and yellow appendages. This right here, if you guys can guess, Texas Toast is what that right there is called. You're gonna see them a lot on guysmissilebaits.com, wherever your favorite missile baits retailer is. And so what I'm gonna do right now is I'm actually gonna show you guys exactly how I rig up this setup right here. So all you need is a pair of scissors, and I'm gonna show you exactly why I do it and how I rig it up. All right, so it's pretty simple how I rig the jig here. Here we go, 1/2 ounce Ike Mini Flip, and then also the new Texas Toast. So I'm gonna show you how I do it. First off, what I wanna do is I wanna make sure I'm always gonna trim my skirt just a little bit. The reason being is because I want the full action of these appendages right here to be underneath the jig and not impeded by the skirt. You're gonna get full action that way. So the Ike Mini Flip is a smaller profile. So what I do is I cut about half the Dbomb out. Another very important part here is right here, the sides. I like to take this pair of scissors. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim the sides, just like that, and trim the ribs off the sides of it. That's one reason why the Dbomb is so effective just as a soft plastic too, is because of these ribs. It just gives it that different look, feel, and action, and the fish just don't they just don't let it go. But on a jig, I'm gonna trim the sides. If you notice, I trim both sides of the ribs off. So now I'm just gonna simply thread it on the jig. Now, there's a reason why I trim those off. It makes the jig more streamlined, and it does not, and when you're working this jig over cover, this wider Dbomb is not, catching onto limbs and stuff like that, and tends to pull the bait down a little more. So it just makes it a little more streamlined, and it also fits onto the bait keep a lot better too. That way you can get more casts before you have to put another one on there. You have to fix it, it stays up there good. So there we go. So there's the appendage. If you notice, look at the appendages. They're all covered up by the skirt. So I'm gonna cut all around the jig just to make sure that none of the skirt is impeding on the action. A little bit left on this side. I just wanna make sure that, because if your skirt's hanging down here and it starts to hang up on the legs right here, and these appendages on the bottom, is another 100% key reason why this bite, this trailer and just this Dbomb rig Texas style gets more bites than a lot of things do. So there we go. None of the appendages are impeded by the skirt. We've got the color. I don't have to mess with dip and dye now because of the new Texas Toast Dbomb by Missile Baits. That right there, guys, especially in the middle of the country, this time of the year through the summer, that right there will be a killer. All right, guys, so that's exactly how I rig up the Ike Mini Flip. That's how I've always done it, guys. I have caught hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fish on that setup. Guys, you need to get you some. If you haven't, that smaller profile, smaller in diameter Ike Mini Flip right there, guys, it absolutely will get more bites when nothing else will. Get some, guys. I promise you, you will not be upset. It's the perfect jig for that application for sure. And you can skip it pretty easily too. So speaking of that setup, let's talk about setup there for a second. Very important. And this is where a lot of people start making mistakes when it comes to not just jig fishing, but techniques in general, depending on the type of cover, where you're fishing at the time of the year. So my typical go-to, I will do either a St Croix Rods Victory 7.3 medium heavy fast, and then I will also go up to a 7.4 heavy fast. And a lot of people, when they're fishing jigs, Sometimes they tend to go too long or too heavy of an action. Now, of course, a jig, you need a good hook set on a jig to put the hook in the fish. So you want to go to a lot of heavies and fasts and try to go to real long rods, and you're more worried about the hook set and cracking the fish than you are about putting the bait where it needs to be. Be very careful with that. If you go to a rod that's too stiff or too long, you're gonna start losing accuracy in your cast. So understanding what type of cover you're fishing. Now, if I'm fishing offshore and I'm trying to hit isolated brush piles and stuff, yes, I may go to a little bit longer jig. You know, that way I can really get a lot of sensitivity and feel down there, and I can get a good hook in the fish, especially if I'm fishing deep. But if you're fishing around a lot of shallow cover, which a lot of times a flipping jig, that's exactly what you're doing, especially docks, is when if you go to a rod that's too long or too stiff, you're gonna lose accuracy. You're not gonna be able to, see, when I'm fishing around docks, I like to be able to skip a jig underneath the dock. That 7.4 heavy fast, or if you're going with a real heavy broomstick rod, you're not going to be able to get tip speed to get enough speed up to really effectively skip that jig underneath the dock. That's why I go to a 7.3, a little bit shorter, and it's a medium heavy, so it's got some rubber band effect, so I can really get tip speed up, because that's 100% the most important thing, especially when you're trying to skip a bait underneath something, especially a dock. That's why most of the time I'm going to go with that 7.3. Still has plenty of backbone, plenty of sensitivity to get a really good hook set into that fish. But you know, there are a lot of times when jigs are going to be, you know, a big part of my day. I will have 2 rods set up with the same jig on there. A 7.3 Victory by St Croix Rods, medium heavy fast, and then I'll also have a 7.4 heavy fast Victory or Legend Extreme by St Croix Rods on the deck for both applications. So make sure, and I'm always, guys, all of the time, I am a 20-pound Sunline shooter, fluorocarbon, straight fluorocarbon, guys. It's the best fluorocarbon on the market. It's made with the best material for that setup. But guys, I'm a fast gear ratio, 7.3 to 1. 7.3 medium heavy, 7.4 heavy fast. You know, if you're a tall guy and you're used to, you know, a 7.6 to a 7.11, you know, take that with a grain of salt and just make sure that that rod's not too long for you and you can still be accurate with it. So just be careful with that. Make sure you understand what type of cover you're fishing so you can use the right rod, the right setup for the application that you're trying to use it for. So guys, jig fishing this time of the year, I'm a huge jig guy. I just like catching big fish. I've caught a lot of big fish in my life, and this jig right here has been the reason why I've caught a lot of them. You know, John Cruz and I actually made a trip to a private pond that had giants in it. Man, we caught some absolute giants on these setups right here. So you can view that YouTube channel, John Cruz. Go check him out and look up that. We had, like, I don't remember, 38 pounds or so. A lot of them came off this Ike Mini flip right here. I've caught some really big ones on this thing. So guys, thanks for watching Jig Fishing 101, guys. Keep it simple. Make sure you understand your setup and don't get too crazy with the colors, and check out some of these new colors that are being released at the Classic this week. But thanks guys for watching. See you guys next time. Dream big.